Hi guys, this is just a very quick video in my run of videos on Shakespeare, and it's just because sometimes we are approaching Shakespeare plays without really understanding the relevant background, and it is absolutely essential, regardless of which Shakespeare play you're doing, but particularly for your history plays and your tragedies and your problem plays, that you understand the social hierarchy in which Shakespeare is writing about. There was this hierarchy, and it was a graded system, and it came in a set of four really. Number one was your gentlemen, number two were your citizens, number three were your yeomen, I'm never going to pronounce that correctly, and number four were your artificers and your labourers. This is obviously as well as God's great chain of being. So you've got these hierarchies in place, you've got a social order really, in terms of your plays, and obviously disorder is always going to creep in here, and therein lies some of the problems that we face in the tragedies and the history plays and the problem plays. The second group of citizens, it didn't include everybody who worked in a town, but only those who were masters of a trade. So it excluded people like journeymen, craftsmen hired by the masters, because they were paid a daily wage, and apprentices, so it didn't really include them. The third group, which was the yeomen, again I probably won't ever pronounce that correctly, they were like substantial farmers. They held land that was usually worth I think that it was at least 40 shillings a year, unlike the gentlemen landlords who engaged in manual labour on the farms. So the fourth group, that included all kinds of wage labourers really, and peasants who were not substantial enough to qualify as yeomen or anything else. Group one, guys, which I mentioned, who are your gentlemen, they were also subdivided again into a number of different grades. You can see how we've got all of these different hierarchies at play, and at the top was the prince or the sovereign, and then came the peers in terms of nobility. So people like your duke, your marquis, your earls, your viscounts, your barons, people like that. And finally, the lesser gentry, which were your knights, your esquires, and your gentlemen would follow that. The word gentleman obviously is of note here in terms of Shakespearean England, because it had more than one meaning. And the first meaning can be anybody in the top group of society. So that included your knights and your noblemen, and even your monarchs like your Richard III's and King Henry, and people like that really, and princes, kings, etc, etc, etc. But the second meaning of gentleman in Shakespearean England was used to name a subgroup, as I just mentioned. The subgroup, namely the lowest, were the simple gentlemen. Richard III, if you are studying that, uses the word in the sense when he plans to marry off Clarence's daughter, if you are studying Richard III, to some mean, poor gentleman, is what he says. Your gentlemen, guys, probably represented about 5% of the population, and they also held the most power. Okay, so that's massively important, and they held privilege as well. Essentially, they are land-owning people. They are recognised by other people as holding power, as holding land, as holding a higher place in Shakespeare's social hierarchy. Again, it would be people with a particular rank, people who were educated, highly educated as well. So when we read Shakespeare, we absolutely have to remember that words such as gentle and noble often also refer to social class, much like words such as base and common are referring to your lower classes.